don't give up. You've got a month, maybe two, right? You never know what September's going to be like. Sometimes we get frost in September, sometimes we don't, right? So we've got a month, maybe two, and a lot can happen in 60 days when you've got good sun and warm air. Hey, it's Greg here with MaritimeGardening.com, and I'm out here late July with a bit of a disaster of a garden, and I'm going to put this garden back together. But the purpose of this video really is to stress the point that end of July, beginning of August, there's still a lot of time left. There's still a lot you can get done in the garden. It's not, if you've got something that looks like this is supposed to be a garden with big, beautiful eggplant, and it looks like a catastrophe. There's still time to turn it around. I mean, these eggplant have struggled ever since the day I planted them, and I can't quite explain why. I've always had trouble growing eggplant in my garden. This year I gave them a good bed with good soil. I even mulched this, but I mulched it with seaweed, which is a good mulch in terms of feeding the soil, but it doesn't, depending on what the seaweed, I mean, all seaweed is not the same. Depending on what it's composed, what type of seaweed it is, doesn't always smother weeds as well. Sometimes the light gets through really well and plants can just grow up through it. It doesn't smother things out well, like grass clippings, wood chips, right? So anyway, I'm going to take this garden apart, put it back together, and give it a chance, because there's still an entire month of August and some of September for things to grow, and a lot can happen in that amount of during those months. Let me show you a garden that looked like this just a week ago and what it looks like now. Here's a pepper garden, and a week ago this was just a big green rectangle. It was all weeds, and I just pulled the weeds, laid paper down, put the weeds on top of the paper, and now, I mean, these plants are looking pretty good. I mean, I can even see that they've put on growth since I did that. They're not competing with anything for water, because I got the paper down. The soil is holding moisture better than it was before. It wasn't mulched. I mean, the weeds provide some, weeds protect the soil to some extent, but they're also using up what's in the soil. So now these peppers have the run of the place. All the sun is theirs, all the water's there, all the nutrients are there for the weeds. So they're really coming along, and I got a whole month of August for basically when I started working on this last week, it almost seemed pointless, right? But now they're looking great. So with no further ado, let's get to work on this. And this has a good mulch, right? But the mulch just hasn't been doing its work. So I'm going to pull off the mulch too, put paper down, then put the mulch back, and hopefully we won't have any more weeds. It'll have better moisture retention because it's basically covered properly. And hopefully these eggplant can have a good August to turn into something. Let's go. stresses the value of having your hands in the soil. I can just feel the soil is kind of dry here, so I thought I'd give it some water from my goldfish pond. I put a little compost tea in there. In my almost last, I pulled this one out. This one right here. I pulled it out of the ground. So I don't know. I mean, I just ripped it right out of the ground. Violently ripped it from the ground. So I don't know how well it's gonna do. You'll see. I'll use every trick I've got before the end of this video to protect that from being cooked. But yeah, nothing likes being ripped out of the ground, especially in July, August when the sun's at its height. So I'll just put a bucket over it for a couple days and just let it sort of recuperate from that. So this is a big sheet of pretty heavy paper. And it's just paper, there's no ink, there's no nothing, right? And it costs about half as much as a bale of hay. So, you know, I mean, you judge that value according to your own metrics. This is too big. This is too big to deal with. Let me just, doesn't matter if we rip it. No point going for precision here. Adequacy. Adequacy is our goal. We strive for adequacy. That's our motto. I wonder how you say that in Latin. No, schools will have Latin mottos. I just make a tiny tear in the paper where the plant goes into it. I find with working with materials like this, you get into a rhythm after a few minutes of messing with it. So I look a bit clumsy and hand-fisted right now. This is just, I'm just learning how to work with the material, that's all. Throw a little bit of crap on there just to hold that in place. You notice I didn't get all the weeds off perfectly. There's really no point in doing that. Because paper is going to kill whatever weeds are still on the ground. You're just removing the height and the volume, right? That's your goal. Removing volume. That's all right. Just remove that little bit there. Yeah, it's just like a little. It's almost like doing crafts with kids. Same sort of idea, really, in terms of making it all fit. Anyway, I'll just fast forward through all this. Alright, so the application of the cardboard was far from elegant, but we got it on. We got it on there. All these weeds I'm throwing on will flatten out, just being welted down by the sun, right? So they look like they've got some height and might be competing with the plants for sun right now, but that will be short-lived. So it'll all flatten out. And yeah, there's some weed seeds in there. But there's weed seeds everywhere in my garden, so we're just we're zen about that. You can see when I planted these, I was optimistic about the spacing. Because eggplant can get big. And honestly, I thought they'd be a lot bigger by now. I thought they'd be the size of zucchini, but it didn't happen. This isn't one of the best. This is a good spot in my garden, but it's not one of the best spots. It doesn't get all the afternoon light. There's a hill over here that tends to smother some of the light. But it's still a good spot. I mean, I grew squash here last year, and they grew great, right? I got a good harvest out of them. So, still a good spot. I guess the theme of this video is optimism. All right, these eggplants don't look like much right now, but there's foliage. Some of them have a bit of size. And having planted eggplant almost every year I don't get much out of my eggplant. I've never had a really great harvest. And it's just mainly, I mean, I sound like a broken record here, but we just don't get really good sun here. I've given them a pretty good spot, not the best spot. I started these indoors in a south-facing window in my house. Basically, really gave these plants a good chance at success. So hopefully that yields up results. So I mean, this is a bit of work. I'm out here in the morning before breakfast while it's still a bit cool. That's the time to do your gardening. Don't go out at midday. It'd be demoralizing. Where I am, the flies are so bad you just can't. It's just like being tortured. It's hellish. I'm going to use mulch to hold that plant up a bit. It's flopped over a little bit. I'm putting some crazy weeds back on here. Yeah, there we go. All right, now there's that plant I almost killed. What do we got here? Just put this bowl over it for now. Don't tell my wife. This is this is her favorite salad bowl. But yeah, we'll just give this. We got a nice little eggplant here, and I yanked it right out of the ground. So we'll just do that for a couple days. Let the roots maybe recuperate. I gave it a good watering. We'll see what happens. Anyway, it went from being a mess to looking very neat to looking like a mess again, but in a few days, really, maybe even in 24 hours, all these weeds will flatten out and it'll start to resemble that pepper garden over there. And, you know, we get a few good rains and a few good days. And, you know, it doesn't look like much, but I'm reasonably confident that this bed will actually start to look like something in a couple weeks. So that's the theme. You know, if it's late July and you got something that's not looking that good, but it's growing and it looks reasonably healthy and there's foliage coming out of the plant has established itself, it is growing. I'm not saying this is going to work in all cases, right? But don't give up. You've got a month, maybe two. Right? You never know what September is going to be like. Sometimes we get frost in September, sometimes we don't, right? So we got a month, maybe two, and a lot can happen in 60 days when you've got good sun and warm air. So we'll see what happens with this. I mean, I've got a garden tour coming up in a week or so. We'll see just how much has changed here in a week, and stay tuned for all that. All right, so anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, share, subscribe. Check out my podcast, maritimegardening.com. Check out my column, my weekly newsletter at maritimegardening.substack.com. You can subscribe to that. And otherwise, until next time, get out there, get at it, have fun in your garden. Thanks for watching.